Welcome back, everybody. We're diving into a story that I think you'll find really inspiring and relatable. We're going to be looking at Eileen Wilder's journey from being a homeschool mom to building a multi-million-dollar business.
Wow.
Yeah, pretty incredible, right? We found this interview with her on Myron Golden's YouTube channel, and I think there's so much we can learn from her experience.
Oh, yeah, for sure. It's a great example of how anyone can achieve success regardless of their starting point.
Okay, so let's paint a picture here. Eileen was homeschooling 3 kids in a tiny 2-bedroom apartment.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and her husband was driving for Uber just to make ends meet.
I can imagine that was tough.
Definitely not an easy situation. A lot of our listeners can probably relate to that feeling of juggling family responsibilities and trying to make things work on a tight budget.
Absolutely. It's a reality for so many people.
Then comes the turning point. Eileen's friend Jackie invites her to this marketing conference, but the ticket is like $600.
Whoa, that's a big chunk of change.
Yeah, especially back then. For them, it was a big deal.
Yeah, I bet. So what made her decide to go?
That's a great question. I think it speaks to that feeling of maybe needing a change,
Yeah.
Like when you realize your current path isn't leading you where you want to go.
Right. Sometimes you just need to take a leap of faith.
Exactly. So Eileen ends up at this conference surrounded by all these successful entrepreneurs, and she's totally out of her element.
Oh, I bet that was intimidating.
Totally. Imagine her in the back of the room, frantically Googling all the marketing jargon, trying to look like she knows what's going on.
I've been there. It's that classic imposter syndrome.
But instead of letting it get to her, she has this aha moment where she sees the potential of entrepreneurship.
It's like a switch flips in her mind.
Yeah, exactly. And this is where Myron Golden's concept of collapsing timeframes comes in. He basically says, why wait a year to make 10 offers? Try making those 10 offers in a month or even a week.
Interesting. So it's about taking action now rather than waiting for the perfect moment.
Exactly. And that applies to so many areas of life, not just business. It's about overcoming procrastination and recognizing that the time to act is always now.
It's about shifting from someday to today.
Love that.
Oh.
So fired up by this new perspective, Eileen decides to invest in Russell Brunson's coaching program, which was a whopping $21,800.
Oh, wow. Wasn't that almost their entire annual income?
It was. They actually ended up putting it on credit cards. A pretty big risk.
It's definitely a risk, but it also shows how committed she was.
Yeah. It wasn't just a passing interest. She was all in. What are your thoughts on investing in coaching programs, especially when finances are tight?
It's a tough call. I think it depends on the individual and their circumstances, but sometimes the biggest obstacle to growth isn't lack of resources. It's a lack of willingness to invest in ourselves.
So true.
Yeah.
It's about shifting our mindset from, I can't afford this, to how can I make this happen?
Exactly. And for Eileen, that investment ended up paying off big time.
Okay, so what was her first venture?
Well, drawing on her background as a pastor's wife and her love for the Bible, she started with life coaching, but with a focus on biblical principles.
Makes sense. She later discovers Myron Golden's teachings, which are based on what he calls King Solomon's business model.
Yeah, have you heard of that? It's pretty fascinating.
I have, but I'd love to hear you break it down for us.
Sure. It's essentially a model for leveraging your expertise to provide value to others through consulting, speaking to crowds, and creating products or services that generate income.
So a blend of ancient wisdom and modern business strategy.
Pretty much.
Love it. Now here's where things get interesting. Eileen books a venue for her first live event before she even finishes Myron's program.
That's bold. Why do you think she did that?
I think it was a strategic move. By creating that external commitment, she was forcing herself to take action and overcome any procrastination.
It's like burning the boats. No turning back.
Exactly. And that brings us to the night of the event. Picture this, only 8 people show up.
Oh, no. That must have been disappointing.
Well, here's the thing. 4 of them were friends. She invited just to fill the room.
Really?
She was determined to make it work. And guess what? 5 of those attendees ended up investing in her mentorship program, generating $108,000 in sales from just one small event.
Wow. Talk about a return on investment.
And to think this was before she'd even fully honed her unique value proposition.
It shows the power of authentically connecting with your audience and delivering real value.
Oh, and we can't forget about Eileen's husband. Initially, he was pretty skeptical about all of this, especially with them putting so much money on credit cards.
I can understand his hesitation.
Yeah, but after seeing her success at that first event, he became her biggest supporter.
Actions speak louder than words.
That's for sure.
Ah.
So Eileen is on a roll, but she's still figuring out her ultimate offering. It takes time and experimentation, but she eventually discovers her true calling, helping others craft their own compelling signature messages.
Hmm. That's something I think a lot of people struggle with. How do you even begin to define your signature message?
Yeah, that's a great question, and we'll dive into that in the next part of our deep dive.
Looking forward to it. So, how do you go about crafting that compelling signature message? It sounds kind of daunting.
Right. Where do you even begin?
Well, Eileen has this great analogy. She says it's like standing in a forest surrounded by trees. You can't see the shape of the whole woods.
I get that. It's easy to get lost in the details of our own lives.
Exactly. So, how do we step back and gain that aerial view?
Yeah, how do we see our stories from a perspective that allows us to pull out those valuable lessons?
Eileen suggests starting with reflection. Ask yourself, what are the defining moments that have shaped who I am today?
It's like connecting the dots between those seemingly random events.
Yeah. And then ask yourself, what challenges have I overcome? What lessons did I learn? That's where the gold is.
Our struggles, our setbacks, those are the things that make our stories relatable.
Absolutely. And once you've identified those defining moments and challenges, focus on the aha moment.
Those turning points when you had a realization that changed your perspective.
Right. But Eileen emphasizes that it's not enough to just tell your story chronologically.
So it's not just about recounting events. There's more to it than that.
Yeah, you need to craft it in a way that resonates with your audience. Understand their needs, their pain points.
It's that shift from I to you that we talked about, making your audience the hero of the story.
Exactly. And by framing your story in a way that connects with your audience, you build trust and establish yourself as a guide.
It's like when you read a book and think, wow, they totally get me.
That feeling of connection is what makes a message powerful. But Eileen also stresses the importance of refining your message.
So it's not just a one-time thing. It's an ongoing process.
Right. It's about constantly iterating, testing, seeking feedback to ensure your message is clear, concise, and impactful.
Like polishing a diamond until it sparkles.
Now remember that call to action we mentioned earlier. Eileen believes that your signature message should lead to a clear invitation.
So it's not about being pushy. It's about offering a solution to a problem your audience is facing.
Right, and the best offers are those that align with your message.
It's that seamless flow from inspiration to action. You've shared your insights. Now you're providing a way for your audience to benefit.
And this is about more than just money. It's about sharing your gifts, making a difference.
Aligning your passion with your purpose.
Exactly. Eileen's story is a reminder that this is possible for anyone. It doesn't matter where you're starting from.
It's about embracing your story and sharing it with the world.
And speaking of sharing, let's move on to Eileen's advice on conquering the fear of public speaking.
Because let's face it, even the most confident people get nervous before getting on stage. Okay, so let's talk about public speaking, because I know that's a big fear for a lot of people.
I feel like almost everyone gets nervous before getting on stage.
Yeah, even seasoned speakers.
Yeah.
But Eileen has this really unique approach to dealing with that fear.
Oh, yeah. She doesn't focus on like positive self-talk or visualization.
It's not the typical advice you hear, right?
Right. She tackles it from a physiological perspective.
So she's saying we can actually use our bodies to influence our minds.
Exactly. She talks about the power pose.
Have you heard of that?
Yeah, it's this specific posture that you hold for a few minutes before speaking.
Okay. I'm intrigued. What exactly is the power pose?
Imagine an Olympic athlete crossing the finish line, arms raised, chest out, head held high.
So it's about taking up space, projecting confidence.
Exactly. And by doing that, you actually change your hormonal response to stress.
Wow. So our bodies are sending signals to our brains.
Yeah. Studies have shown that the power pose can increase testosterone and decrease cortisol.
Interesting. So it's like tricking your body into feeling more confident and less stressed.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And Eileen also talks about the importance of breath work.
Oh, yeah. Taking those deep breaths.
It's such a simple technique, but it can really calm your nerves.
And what about movement? Does she talk about that?
She does. She's a big advocate for taking a walk or doing some light stretching before speaking.
So it's not about trying to suppress that nervous energy. It's about channeling it in a positive way.
Exactly. And all of this ties into Eileen's core message. The power of communication can transform your life.
No matter what your background is or what you do.
It's about finding your voice and using it to connect with others and create value.
And Eileen's story is such an inspiration. It shows us that anything is possible if you're willing to put in the work.
So what's the one thing you want our listeners to take away from this deep dive?
I think it's the reminder that we all have a story to tell, And that story has the power to impact others.
And don't be afraid to invest in yourself. Seek out mentors and resources that can help you unlock your potential.
And if you're looking for guidance on crafting your signature message, don't forget to check out Eileen's 5-day challenge at craftyoursignatuремessage.com.
It's a great opportunity to learn from someone who's been there and done that.
Well, that's all the time we have for today. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Eileen Wilder's incredible journey.
It's been a pleasure. And to all our listeners out there, keep learning, keep growing, and keep sharing your unique brilliance with the world.